At 1900 hours local time, the 15th of September 2025, the U.S. military had already been tracking the target for nearly 2 hours. The contact was small, no more than 35 feet, but it was moving at 45 knots. Fishing boats don't do that. Frigers don't do that. There is only one kind of vessel that runs like that in these waters. A Cartel go fast. On radar, it looked like a single streak slicing through empty sea. No AI's transponder, no radio calls. Its course was straight north, 200 m off Venezuela, right toward open lanes that eventually bend toward the United States. That alone was enough to flag it, but the electro-optical pod circling high overhead gave the real confirmation. Zoomed in from altitude, the operators could see 4 Mercury outboards hammering at full throttle, tarps stretched tight over the deck, and silhouettes of men pacing nervously. Inside the skiff, the crew thought they were invisible. They'd run this route before. Same time of year, same coordinates, same payout. Protection money had been paid. Local contacts had promised the path was clear. Each man knew the math. If the cargo made it north, their personal cut would be more than $2 million. That kind of payday bought you a new life. The helmsman kept checking the GPS, nodding to himself as the coordinates ticked exactly as planned. What he didn't know was that this boat had been locked in a crosshair since 1700 hours. The strike package was already authorized. Operators were only waiting for one final confirmation. At 1906, the infrared screen flared. One white-hot signature expanded into a bloom of fire. The skiff was gone in seconds. 3 men would not survive the night. This was the second U.S. military strike this month, and it changed the rules at sea. On the 15th of September 2025, the White House confirmed that U.S. military forces had conducted what they called a kinetic strike on a suspected Venezuelan drug smuggling vessel operating in international waters. To the public, the only visible evidence was a short video clip released on official social channels. The 20-second recording showed a flash on the horizon followed by fire reflecting across the sea. There were no images of the crew, no close-ups of the cargo, and no verifiable proof of what the boat was carrying. Officials claimed it was narcotics bound for the United States, but they have yet to release evidence to confirm that point. The location 200 miles off Venezuela placed the strike clearly outside territorial waters. That detail mattered because it allowed the U.S. officials to frame the operation not as an incursion into sovereign space, but as a defensive action in the global commons. The language was deliberate. "This is about protecting the homeland," the president said, repeating a line that has become central to the administration's counter-narcotics posture. What wasn't said? How the strike actually was carried out. No aircraft type, no launch platform, no ordnance were identified. Reporters pressed Pentagon spokespeople for the clarification, but the only reply was that appropriate measures had been taken to neutralize a confirmed threat. One fact was undeniable. This was the second strike in less than 2 weeks, and it confirmed that the United States had crossed a line from interdiction to destruction. 13 days before the 15th of September strike, another explosion lit up the Caribbean. On the 2nd of September, U.S. officials announced their first kinetic action against what they called a narco vessel moving north toward the United States. That incident killed 11 people on board. The Department of Defense quickly released a short video clip, just like the 15th of September footage. It showed a vessel erupting into flame. No close-ups, no forensic evidence, just a blast in open water. Venezuelan state media claimed the dead were fishermen. Washington insisted they were cartel smugglers. The dispute never got resolved because no independent investigators were allowed to examine the wreckage. Still, the strike made headlines around the world. It was the first time that the U.S. military had publicly acknowledged destroying a suspected drug boat outright, rather than interdicting it with a Coast Guard cutter or boarding teams, and it didn't happen in a vacuum. In the days that followed, aviation spotters noted US Air Force F-35S repositioning to Puerto Rico. Officials downplayed it as routine, but in hindsight, the deployment would fit a broader posture. Surveillance aircraft and drones were already operating across the southern Caribbean. Layer by layer, the region was turning into a battle space. Then came the second strike on the 15th of September. Smaller in body count, but no less significant. And almost immediately after, on the 16th of September, U.S. officials claimed that they were tracking yet another suspected drug vessel in the same waters. They didn't say what would happen next. Taken together, the timeline looked less like isolated incidents and more like an escalation cycle. First strike, 11 dead. Second strike, 3 more. Third target already declared. Washington was signaling that this wasn't a one-off operation. It was the start of a campaign. From Washington's perspective, the message was clear. Cartel vessels are no longer just criminals, they're national security threats. Officials didn't describe the men on board as smugglers. They used another word, narco-terrorists. That label wasn't chosen lightly. It links transnational crime to the same legal and political framework used after the 11th of September, when terrorism became the dominant lens for U.S. security policy. The president framed the 15th of September strike as homeland defense. He said the boats were carrying lethal amounts of narcotics destined for U.S. streets, and that neutralizing them at sea was an act of protection, not aggression. Pentagon briefers echoed the same line. These weren't law enforcement cases anymore. They were hostile threats in international waters. Supporters of the policy argued it was long overdue. Cartels have grown more sophisticated, fielding go fast with 4 or even 5 high-performance outboards, some capable of outrunning Coast Guard cutters. They move tons of cocaine per trip, enough to generate billions in downstream crime and addiction. If we can't chase them, we'll strike them, one official remarked bluntly. Inside the Beltway, hawks applauded the decisive stance. They said that kinetic strikes are cost-effective deterrents. It is a show of strength that forces traffickers to think twice. Critics, however, warned that redefining smugglers as terrorists risks blurring crucial legal lines, and once blurred, they may never return. If Washington's rhetoric was sharp, the blowback came just as fast. The 15th of September strike raised a fundamental question. Was it legal? In U.S. law, the power to authorize military action rests with Congress. The Constitution is explicit. Only lawmakers can declare war. Yet no such authorization existed for these strikes. There was no joint resolution, no new mandate tailored for counter-narcotics operations. When Pentagon lawyers were pressed, they pointed instead to inherent self-defense under Article 2 of the Constitution and the president's duty to protect the homeland. That argument satisfied the administration, but it did not satisfy everybody else. Critics on Capitol Hill, including members of both parties, warned that the executive branch was stretching its authority far beyond precedent. If suspected smugglers in international waters can be hit without congressional approval, what stops the same logic from being used elsewhere? Today, it is drug boats. Tomorrow, it is other threats. Legal analysts added another layer, the law of armed conflict. Traditionally, narcotics trafficking falls under criminal law enforcement, not warfare. Treating smugglers as combatants risks erasing the line between police action and military conflict. Human rights organizations caution that without transparent evidence, no cargo samples, no confirmed IDs, the strikes edge dangerously close to extrajudicial killings. The regional reaction was just as fierce. Cuba accused Washington of militarizing the Caribbean and destabilizing a fragile security balance. Caracas claimed that the men were killed were innocent Venezuelans and denounced the attacks as violations of sovereignty, even though they occurred in international waters. Venezuelan state television aired interviews with grieving families, calling the U.S. claims fabrications designed to justify aggression. Inside the Pentagon, even some uniformed officers voiced quiet unease. Destroying suspected vessels removes any chance of gathering intelligence on networks, routes, or cartel leadership. Boarding actions, while dangerous, often yield invaluable intel. Missile strike yields nothing but wreckage. Supporters countered that the wreckage is the point. Deterrence through destruction. But with no public evidence released, the credibility gap only widens. Each strike may buy tactical success. But strategically, it risked isolating Washington from allies, alarming neighbors, and igniting debates at home that no amount of presidential framing could easily contain. One detail stood out after the 15th of September strike. The Pentagon never said how it was carried out. No aircraft, no drones, no missile type were officially confirmed, but the signature, a pinpoint blast at sea, fit the profile of a precision-guided strike. U.S. forces in the region already maintain a layered presence. Surveillance aircraft like the HC-130J Super Hercules and the P-8 Poseidon can cover hundreds of miles of ocean with advanced surface search radars. Electrical pods zoom down from altitude, distinguishing outboards from fishing gear, even counting the crew on deck. Once a vessel is flagged, strike options range from manned fighters to armed drones. Which one was used on the 15th of September remains undisclosed. Why strike at all? Because narco vessels are uniquely dangerous to interdict, known as ghosts. These boats are built low to the water, often fiberglass hulls barely visible on radar. With 4 or more high-performance outboards, they can outrun most patrol craft. Boarding them requires cutters or helicopters to get dangerously close within rifle range of crews that may be armed and desperate. By comparison, a precision strike eliminates the threat from a distance. No chase, no boarding, no firefight. The downside is obvious. Nothing survives. No cargo to analyze, no suspects to interrogate. No networks to map. It is the cleanest tactical solution, but strategically, it may cost more than it saves. For the men on the 15th of September GIF, the decision was invisible. They thought they were out running patrols. In reality, their course had been tracked for hours, and when the order came, the shot arrived faster than any helmsman could react to. Intelligence professionals voiced another concern. By vaporizing suspected vessels, Washington also vaporizes opportunities. Boarding actions have yielded encrypted radios, satones with cartel contacts, even maps of routes and safe houses. Each strike destroys not only the target, but also the chance to exploit its secrets. In the long run, that may blind counter-narcotics efforts more than it helps them. Politically, the pressure is mounting. Members of Congress are calling for oversight hearings, arguing that lethal strikes without authorization creates a dangerous precedent. Allies are cautious, worried that the U.S. is normalizing the use of military force in law enforcement contexts. Meanwhile, critics in Latin America see the strikes as proof of unchecked US militarization in the region. In short, one boat destroyed produced more than wreckage. It produced ripples, legal, strategic, and diplomatic. That may take years to calm. 2 strikes in 13 days. 3 dead this time, 11 before. Public evidence still limited, and the legal and political waves are only getting bigger. But here is the real question for you. Was this smart interdiction or a dangerous precedent at sea? I want to hear your take down in the comments. Thanks for sticking around with me for this breakdown. If you got value out of it, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next deep dive. And if you want to go a step further and support our little channel here directly, join the fleet. You get loyalty badges, priority responses, and you'll be helping us surface more true maritime stories that usually stay below the radar. Click join on the channel page and get on board. Until then, stay sharp, and remember, art running a radar beam. Yeah, good luck with that. See you next time.